Well. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Irish Breakdown. We had a show
Some of us
earlier.
are coming back for a second show.
I mean, I was
Some
there.
of us were just kind of loitering around the bottom of the screen.
I was lurking. While I was watching the film with you. It was really, it was good stuff.
Lurking,
man. I really
is
it.
Digital loitering. I'm just saying.
that's correct. I didn't see a sign that said no loitering, so I was in there. But anyway, welcome everyone. It's a good afternoon. We have our Stacking Up podcast coming your way here in just a moment. By the way, I'm Vince D'Addario. I am the football analyst here at Irish Breakdown, and right over there is Brian Driscoll. He is the publisher at irishbreakdown.com, and it is our normal Wednesday show. But we are adding a piece this week and beyond. Brian and I talked about it. We think this is a great little piece to add to our show. But before we get into things, we do have a super chat, Brian, that I definitely want to get to. Demetrius Rex jumping in
before the show even started.
I know, right?
It was supposed to have started by then, but
I mean, but
somebody forgot to get the cards ready for the show. I don't want to point any fingers at who that was, but I appreciate the super chat, Demetrius.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And he says, I have a feeling Notre Dame is going to win this football game and by a lot. I like where your head's at, Demetrius Rex. I really, really do. I hope you're right. Like I said, it'll make my drive home from Chicago so much nicer, so much sweeter, and I'll be in such a better mood when we come on for our post-game podcast. So I hope you're right. I really, really do. But today, again, is our Stacking Up podcast, and we are going to talk about the Notre Dame defense versus the Wisconsin offense. And this is the matchup, Brian. It may not be the marquee matchup. It may not be the matchup that necessarily wins or loses this game. But this is the matchup I'm most confident in from a Notre Dame standpoint.
I can understand that. I think that the defense is obviously what we anticipated being Notre Dame's strength, and I think the defense is trending in the right direction, whereas the offense has kind of scored fewer points and had fewer yards per play in each of the three games. The defense has kind of gotten better in each of the three games. And, to me, it's one of those games where the defense doesn't have to win this game. They just have to not lose it. And what I mean by that is, this is not an explosive Wisconsin offense. It doesn't mean that Wisconsin can't score, but it's not a team that you got to worry about going out there and hanging a 40 spot on you. They're going to try to control the game and keep your offense off the field, and all you have to do is kind of go out there, do your job, and make plays. So, I think for me, that's kind of what I'm looking for from this is just go out there and do your job, play your game, and go from there. So I think if they can play that, do that, get to that level, then I think this team has a shot to win this game. What you cannot do to your offense is you can't allow Wisconsin to do what they want to do, which is control the ball, and then you can't allow Wisconsin to rip off the big plays. I think those are the two keys for me. But this is the matchup that's going to be what I think this matchup is more about, Vince, for me, is more of a big picture thing.
Okay.
It's not so much the one that I think has the ultimate say on who wins or loses. That's the one we did yesterday, the Notre Dame offense against the Wisconsin defense. I do think this is going to tell us is Notre Dame capable of playing against this type of team?
A smash mouth, run heavy,
big physical, right?
Sure.
And I think it was a question about Marcus Freeman's defense at Cincinnati. And then they went and played Georgia and held Georgia in check in the run game at the expense of giving up some big plays in the pass game. Well, Wisconsin doesn't have Georgia's quarterback or receivers. So how is Notre Dame going to match up in that regard? So to me, it's gonna have more of a big picture say for me, but at the same time, it's still going to be a very intriguing part of this game.
No question. So let's jump into our new segment for Stacking Up, and that's what the recruiting on paper. And this is a little bit different, I guess, than last week. Not last week, yesterday, the other side of the ball. So why don't you throw that up there and let's talk about the recruiting side of things. We're talking Notre Dame's defense versus Wisconsin's offense. And
what's interesting is it's kind of the opposite of yesterday's, Vince.
Yeah.
In that Notre Dame's offense is loaded with 4 or 5 star players. 1 5-star, 8 4-star players in the starting lineup. That's been the case for years at Notre Dame. I mean, Notre Dame hasn't had an issue putting highly ranked players in the field on offense. They've just had a problem getting those highly ranked players to produce like you
Sure.
think that they would, especially earlier in their careers. Defensively, Notre Dame's been producing a lot of, big-time players that weren't necessarily big-time recruits. Julian Aguara was not a top 200 recruit. Jerry Tillery was a offensive lineman. Jeremiah Wusu-Koromo was a 3-star recruit. Julian Love was mainly a 3-star, low 4-star recruit. Troy Pride wasn't a highly ranked guy. Jalen Elliott wasn't a highly ranked guy. Alohi Gilman was a 2-star that transferred from Miami. You get the point, right? Drew Tranquil was not a highly ranked recruit, and on and on and on and on. And yet the defense has been really good. The interesting thing about it is this is what Brian Kelly has always said throughout his career and his tenure, even going back to his first year, was, hey, look, we can scheme our way into points on offense. Defense is where you really need the better players. Well, from a recruiting standpoint, that's not where Notre Dame's best players have primarily been in most situations. And yet the defense is what's carried this football team the last 4 years. And this is also a little bit more of an even matchup than it was, because in this one, as you see, Notre Dame has 6 4-star players in their starting lineup. Wisconsin has 5 on offense.
Yeah.
And there are some highly ranked kids that come off that are that are depth chart guys, but this one is a little bit more evenly matched than yesterday's was. But at the same time, you see a kid that was ranked 3,589. You know what I mean? That's starting Wisconsin.
How's that possible?
They have a receiver that's probably their best receiver, at least their possession guy, that was ranked in the thousands. So still not a lineup filled with highly ranked players, but this is a team that has some talent.
Well, and I feel like the higher the ranking of the skill position guys, the more, explosive they are and things of that nature. Well, the most explosive player on their offense is their running back, and he is the most explosive player on their offense. There's no two ways about it. They don't need guys necessarily to be explosive at the wide receiver position. They're there to catch the ball when they have to, move the chains kind of thing. Yeah, will they have a big play every now and again? Sure. But that's not necessarily how this offense is even put together. Tight end, possession receivers, a running back that can, be an explosive guy. And he is. Look, again, as the defensive coordinator going up against Wisconsin, what do you need to take away? You need to take away their running game. You need to take away Chez Malusi. He's their best player, and that's the best part of what they do on offense.
Yeah, and that's certainly their most productive player. I still would argue that their best player is Jake Ferguson, the tight end. They just haven't really thrown the ball a ton this year. I think Jake's their best player. He just hasn't necessarily got the touches. I think Chez has certainly been their most productive player, and that's the nature of their offense. And so, when you look at this from a recruiting standpoint, Notre Dame up front has a mix of 4-star and 3-star players, exactly what Wisconsin does from a 4- and 3-star standpoint on their offensive line. Skill-wise, Notre Dame is a mix of 4- and 3-star players at the secondary positions, same with Wisconsin. So from a pure recruiting standpoint, this is what's so interesting about it, Vince. From a pure recruiting standpoint, this is the more evenly matched up part of the game. Although I think you and I would probably argue that if we're taking recruiting out and just argue just what we see on film, it's the Wisconsin defense filled with a bunch of 3-star recruits that is the fuel behind their team. So it is similar. It is kind of interesting how similar Wisconsin and Notre Dame are in that regard.
From a recruiting standpoint.
Yeah. Whereas there's more highly ranked kids on the offense than the defense, yet it's the defense that is the driving force behind that team's success. So certainly interesting in that regards. But, you kind of talk about Chez Malusi. He's a transfer from Clemson. And so that's another thing is it's not a surprise that their highly ranked back is a guy that came from somewhere else.
Sure.
And if you're a running back looking to transfer, I don't know why you wouldn't look at Wisconsin, at least as an option.
Absolutely. You kidding me?
You're going to get touches.
All I would do is if I was the offensive staff and I was trying to, lure a transfer kid that's a highly ranked running back, I just take him to the offensive line room. Be like, these are the guys you get to run behind. Where do you sign?
They're big boys.
Right here. Big boys. They're and they push people around. They've got an attitude. They are a very prototypical Midwest, Big Ten offensive line that's just going to push you around. And I love those offensive
Well,
lines.
and what I like about it too, from a recruiting standpoint, Vince, is they have 2 4-star offensive linemen in their starting lineup. They have more 4-star offensive linemen on the bench than they do in the starting lineup, which is what I like about them. Because hey, look, I don't care what your ranking is. If Josh Seltzner's a better gives us a better chance to win, he's playing over you, whether you're a 4-star guy or a returning starter. Kendrick Lyles has started a bunch of games for them. Logan Brown was a top 100 recruit. He's not starting in the offensive line. So it really is impressive. Vince, before we move on, I'll get it, I swear. Before we get to the run game breakdown, we do have another super chat from Dino Bambino 23.
Love
Great
that name,
by the way.
Love it.
Says, hey guys, are y'all going to the game this Saturday? I'm taking my wife for our first wedding anniversary. That is a great wedding anniversary present for you. I am curious if it's going to be the same for your wife, but she agreed to it, so that's pretty awesome. You must have a good one there, buddy.
Yeah, no kidding.
But congratulations on that. I will not be there. He will. Vince will be.
I will be there, so we'll see how that goes. Like I said, I want a peaceful drive home. So
yes.
I'm really counting on Notre Dame to step it up here. That's for sure.
Yes, but Dino, congratulations on the year anniversary, and of course on being able to convince your wife to spend that 1-year anniversary going to a Notre Dame football game in Chicago. That's pretty awesome.
Are you going to eat the year-old cake? That's what I want to know. Did you do that when you had your 1-year anniversary? Yeah, we did too.
We had amaretto flavored cake, which was really good.
Nice.
Yeah, we actually froze it because we got married in Ohio and then drove out to Colorado where we lived.
Oh wow!
And so we left the frozen cake in Ohio with my grandmother's freezer, and then we were out. So we didn't do it like on our 1-year anniversary. Yeah. We did it around then
in the neighborhood of
1 year ish, and had it. But but I did not think I was going to like that cake. My wife picked that flavor out, but it was a cherry chip with amaretto frosting. It was a cherry chip cake with amaretto frosting.
Nice.
And so 1 year she actually made me cherry chip cupcakes with amaretto frosting, and she would slice and then roast almonds and put those around it too. Jeez. Phenomenal. My wife can really, really bake. She doesn't do it often, but when she does, it's phenomenal. So Dino, thank you for the super chat, and
congratulations,
and again, enjoy the game this weekend.
First of many.
So Vince, let's dive into the run game.
Yes, the run game, and this is really where the rubber meets the road, because watching that Penn State game back, Wisconsin controlled that game on the ground. I mean, they did work on the ground. Chaz Malusi obviously had a good game, but it was the hosses up front. They were moving that Penn State front around. Now, of course, Penn State made some plays and things of that nature, but that run game scares the you-know-what out of me, just because they're so good. They're so good at moving the football, on the ground. This is going to be a challenge for Notre Dame. I have a lot of faith in Notre Dame's defense. I really, really do. But they're almost going to have to sell out in the run game to shut them down, and then they're going to have to make plays in the pass game. So we're focusing on the run game, but I feel like they're going to have to try to confuse Wisconsin a little bit with some stunts and some pressures and some things like that. But this is the number one focus. If I'm Marcus Freeman going into this game, you have to at least neutralize this run attack from Wisconsin.
See, I think Penn State did that, though. I guess that's where I disagree with you a little bit is Wisconsin got their yards against Penn State. They rushed for 180 yards. Chase Malusi went for over 100. But he only averaged 3.9 yards per carry, and as a team, Wisconsin only averaged 3.1 yards per carry. And again, it's a little more than that because they had some sacks. And I still will say every chance I get that it is stupid that they count sacks as rushing yards.
Agreed.
But I don't think they were necessarily as dominant as they normally are. I think Penn State's rush defense is solid, but I thought Penn State did a better job against Wisconsin, for example, than they did Auburn in that game. I mean, Auburn rushed for only 2 more yards, but Auburn was 4.5 yards per carry, 4.55, whereas Wisconsin was 3.1. And it is because they are such a sort of ground and pound offense that I think they were able to move some guys around, but Penn State was also able to use their speed to not limit some of the big runs. They had that one big long run that Ches had early. It was like about a 20 or so yard run. other than that, it was a lot of ground and pound stuff. Now, I will say that Wisconsin did move the ball relatively well.
Yep.
Got into the red zone. What was it? Trying to look at here. They got into the red zone 4 times against Penn State. Now, twice were late in the game when it was kind of coming from behind, and they had to throw it a little bit more, and only scored once in those situations. So I wasn't quite as impressed with the Wisconsin ground attack. Now, I watched them against Eastern Michigan, and they just bullied Eastern Michigan, but Eastern Michigan's not that good.
And I didn't even watch that game because I wanted to watch them against, a Division I.
Right.
You know what I mean? Against a Power 5 team.
Yeah, just for context, Eastern Michigan gave up 206 rushing yards and 6.1 yards per carry to UMass this past weekend in a win. UMass is not good. So, I really, UMass went for 121 against BC and ran for 42 yards against Pitt. And they went for 206 on Eastern Michigan. So this is the strength of the Wisconsin team. I'm still not necessarily sold on this being a 2 years ago version of Wisconsin offense. I think they're big and physical. That is the one thing I'll say. When I look at their offensive line, actually one of their least experienced guys is a guy that I like more than most. It's Joe Tittman, the center. I think he's been really good. He's not your typical center size either. He's like 6'6", well over 300 pounds, but he moves pretty well. I think Jack Nelson's a pretty good player at right guard. I don't love their tackles, to be completely honest with you. I think Logan Bruss is more of a guard that's playing tackle out of necessity. I think Tyler Veach is a guy that's probably more of a guard, in my opinion. And so the matchup here, to me, that's going to be very interesting, Vince, is it's going to be, how does Notre Dame utilize their speed against Wisconsin's beef?
Absolutely.
That's the question.
Because Notre Dame doesn't have the beef up front like Wisconsin does. So, there's no way they can match up head-to-head from a beef standpoint. So they're going to have to do other things. They're going to have to, get on the outside. They're going to have to move. They're going to have to stunt. They're going to have to use their speed and athleticism, which they have in spades. I have full confidence that they're going to be able to do that. You're giving me more confidence. Shame on you for, against this run game. You're making me more confident, man. That's what happens when I listen to you.
I thought we were negative all the time. That's what I was told. We're negative Nancy's.
Well, only when we're talking about the offensive line.
Only when you hear what you want to hear.
Yeah,
basically.
well, that's fair too. But I really like the matchup of Notre Dame's speed versus Wisconsin's beef. I would take speed over beef all day long.
Yeah, it just depends on how you use it, I think, right? Then it comes down into preparation and game planning. How does Marcus Freeman utilize it? Look, I guarantee you we're going to see a defense that does not look anything like what we saw the first 3 weeks, just from an alignment standpoint. I think we're going to see them doing a lot of different things because this is a completely different defense. And my thought of that comes from what we saw last year.
Yeah.
Marcus Freeman would against teams like Tulsa ran the ball a little bit more than other teams in the AC, and they did a lot more 4-down looks in that game. Georgia, every time Georgia was in a 2 tight end alignment in the bowl game last year, was it the Sugar Bowl? Every time Georgia went with 12 personnel, Cincinnati would put in their 4-3 legitimate 4-3 personnel, like 3 legitimate big linebackers, and they would play big boy football, and they were in a 4-down almost exclusively in that game, especially on early downs. And so Marcus Freeman has shown the willingness to say, hey, look, you don't play like anybody else we play, so we're not going to line up and play you like we play everybody else.
Right.
I think he's a smart enough guy to do that because he's done that already.
Yeah, and we saw in the first few games who were primarily pass offenses, he would almost go 4 levels, right? He had a front, he had the linebackers, and he had some guys kind of right behind the linebackers.
Yeah, including some linebackers.
Right? Exactly. I don't see that being the case on Saturday. I really don't. He's going to get some guys a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage.
Right. So how do you use this? Okay, so what do? You say, okay, we're going to shoot gaps, we're going to penetrate and those kind of things, and that sounds great, and that'll be a part of what you do. But the other part of that is, I think you have to be careful that you don't get too aggressive, because if you're just shooting gaps, all Wisconsin's going to do is they're just going to wash you down and create run lanes. So you've got to be creative. You can't just slant all day, because if you're just slanting all day, they're going to catch you in enough slants in the direction they want you to go that they're going to beat you. I think part of it too is you need to be able to take on blocks and then win. So like Jason Adamiola is not just going to be shooting around guys all the time. I think there's plenty of times where we're going to see him come out and we're going to see him shock and disengage, and we're going to have to see that. And Kurt Heinz, just if he plays this weekend, it's going to have to be a big part of it. You're going to need to see Howard Cross be able to hold up at the point of attack. I'm really curious if we're going to see different personnel more. Are we going to see a little more of Jacob Lacey? Are we going to see maybe some Gabriel Rubio or Aiden Keanaaina? I don't know the answer to those questions, but I'm curious to see if we do that. And then, then the other thought is, okay, so I think there's some merit, however, to still using your 3 down against this team. And when I say that, Vince, is because I think there's merit to being able to play 3 down with Isaiah Foskey moving around, which everybody hates, but then crashing him inside, blowing up those guards, getting him ahead of steam, smashing into those guards. Because here's the big key to the run game. You cannot allow the running backs to get through the first level. If they get through the first level, that is where they're dangerous. Okay. The key for the Notre Dame defensive line and linebackers is to get a push or penetration and force them to declare early. Because this is the great thing about Notre Dame speed. Once they declare where the ball's going, whether it's a bounce or a cutback or whatever, then the speed just flies to the football. And so, to me, this is a game where I want to see Isaiah Foskey moving around. I want to see Jordan Pataho moving around. I want to see Justin Adamiola moving around and letting them get a 3-step head start and just smash those guards right in the face.
I like that idea. I think Isaiah Foskey needs to do better with his timing. There are too many times he's just late.
Well, but see, I think part of that is he's not being asked to crash. What I'm saying is, like, he is on a stunt. Like, it's not a read and react. Hey, Isaiah, you're lining up here in the B gap, and you are running right at the inside hip of that guard or the outside hip of that guard, and you are blasting him. And because if you can get the guard, and this is the big key for Wisconsin, this is the biggest key for the Notre Dame defensive line. If you can get a push against the guards or penetration against the guards, that is where you're going to have success against them, in my opinion. I think Notre Dame can win the edge. I'm confident that with Myron Tungavaloa and Isaiah Foskey, I think they're going to have success on the edge. I think they've been when their technique is right. They're big, they're physical. Myron's 265, Isaiah's 255, 260. It's up the middle that is my concern. And if they can win up the middle, then they will. That's how you beat this Wisconsin offense, is you got to beat them up the middle. And I just think that is one way, not the only way. Wouldn't be my primary defensive look. It is just one way that I think that you can see that get more of a push, right? And to win in the middle is to, again, if you're a big physical 315-pound guard, and I don't care how big and strong you are, if Isaiah Foskey or Jordan Pataho or Justin Adamiola is able to get a 4 or 5 step head start into hitting you, they're going to knock you back. And we've already seen that. That's the key.
Yeah, you cannot allow the line of scrimmage to move in Wisconsin's direction. You can't, because then the running back, he's good enough. Chaz Malusi's good enough to follow those guys and then make a cut and go.
Right.
And you can't be on skates. You have to stand up at the point of attack. I completely agree with that, because, look, if you can stand him up at the line of scrimmage, then the cavalry will come. Mm-hmm. As you mentioned, with the speed that Notre Dame kind of attacks the football, you have to stack them up at the line of scrimmage.
Right.
You can't allow movement on a consistent basis. Look, it's going to happen at times. They may catch Notre Dame in a stun or whatever, but it can't happen on a consistent basis. It just cannot.
So how do they figure that out? How do they do that? And I don't think you can just line up and play 4-3. I mean, people are saying, oh, you're going to play 4-3 defense. You can't just line up and do that all the time. You're going to have to see different personnel. You're going to have to see different alignments. You're going to have to see movement. You're going to have to see the 3 downs at times and just crash them and try to keep Wisconsin guessing. If you just try to line up and say, hey, we're going to go 4-4 against Wisconsin, they're going to eat you up, because their play action game will get to you, which we'll talk about. But more so is like they're gonna put bodies in there. They're just gonna throw, because that's the thing. They're gonna go 2 tight end, 3 tight end.
Sure.
You know, they're gonna have they're just gonna try to just move you, and with the goal of what their offense is, Vince, is they're trying to create as many gaps as possible for their backs to find holes through.
Sure.
And that's one of the things that all the big personnel groups do to you. This is a lot like what Stanford used to do to Notre Dame, right? And so how can you have success slowing that down?
What Notre Dame liked to do last year. I mean, let's be honest. Right. So I mean, it's not going to be anything that Notre Dame hasn't seen before, which I think is good. I think that benefits Notre Dame. I mean, they went up against it in practice, right? And now Marcus Freeman wasn't there. I get that, but the personnel did. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, it's not. But he's seen it,
like you said. I mean, the last game he coached at Cincinnati was similar type of offense. And with all due respect to Ches Malusi, he's their 5th string running back at Georgia. Maybe.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Maybe. Yeah. You know what I mean? So
no. I completely.
And they held Georgia in the 40 yards rushing. Now this Wisconsin line is more experienced, Vince, than that Georgia line was, because they had some injuries. But it's a similar philosophy, similar schemes, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, look, if Marcus Freeman can do to Wisconsin what he did to Georgia, this isn't even going to be a ball game.
No, because they can't beat. No, you're right, because they can't throw the ball on Notre Dame like Georgia threw the ball on Cincinnati. Here's one final piece of this, Vince. The play of the linebackers is going to be so important in this game.
Yep.
My concern is that at times the linebackers have been catchy, right? Like let the second level guys get to you. When they see offensive linemen pulling, the edge players and the linebackers need to see that and crash it hard. If you let those guards get up into the hole, it's not going to work out for you. You know, if I'm Drew White and I'm flowing and I see that guard coming, I'm hitting that gap and I'm blowing him the heck up. Same thing for the end players. If the puller or the kick out guy is your responsibility, don't wait on him.
Yeah, don't allow him to come to you. Yeah, because he's already going to have speed coming at you.
Right.
And if you're still and this guy's coming at you, you're going to lose. Right.
And
you need to take it
and if you stay, it widens the gap.
Yes, absolutely.
Right, to run through. If you crash it, not only does the momentum impact events, but you've now narrowed that hole, or you force them to bounce. And if the Wisconsin running backs are forced to bounce, that's where you're okay. Now Kyle Hamilton is a factor. Houston Griffith, Cam Hart, Isaiah Pryor, Jack Kaiser. Those guys become a bigger factor. Yeah. I'm concerned about that cutback. I'm concerned about that vertical insertion into the line off of a counter or a power play. And Notre Dame and Wisconsin gets a body on a body. And once you get through that first wave of defenders, there's nobody there. That's my concern. So Notre Dame has to be super aggressive, but that's also, to me, using your speed to your advantage. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be this is the key. The Notre Dame linebackers and edge players have to make a living in this game beating Wisconsin's blockers to the point of attack. If they want to get to this kick-out spot, then you need to beat them there.
Yeah.
If they want to pull into the hole, you need to beat them there. Because, hey, you may block me, but if you and I are engaging in the hole, that means there's no more hole.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's going to be a key. It's going to have to be Drew White and JD Birch. JD's been doing it, Vince.
Yes.
But this is a game where Drew White has to just be.
And he's done it at times, but not consistently for an entire game. And so this needs to be a consistent game for him. And they just can't. You can't play passive linebacker against this kind of an offense. You just can't, because you're going to get pushed back, because like you said, Wisconsin does a great job of getting to the second level. And once they get on you, it's game over. You can't allow them to get on you.
This is what also we need to see in this game.
7, 12.
Nope.
14.
5-2.
Oh,
5-2.
Sure.
This has got to be a Bo Bauer game.
Yeah.
Bo Bauer's got to make an impact in this game.
Yep.
This is a game. This is his. I mean, this has got to be for Bo. This has got to be like, oh God, I love these kind of games. You know.
Yeah. Well,
I don't want to see
Pryor
that.
Too.
Right. So I get where he's coming from, but with all due respect, your best linebacker's been JD Bertrand.
Sure. Yeah.
He's more physical. He's bigger, and he's faster than Drew White. So no.
And look, as much as I want to see Prince Colley, I just am not ready to take JD Bertrand off the field.
Well, I mean, he may need a breather in this game, and maybe that's when you see that alignment. But look, if you're going to put Prince Colley in the game, that's fine. But
this is a tough.
He's got to be run stunting. I mean, that's the thing is you don't. play him, but when he's in, you're bringing him.
Yeah, don't make him think
slant
too much.
Slant the defensive ends inside and let him wrap around outside, those kind of things. So, but, when you're going to rest JD, because I think JD is going to need a breather at times in this game, then have, look, there's a couple things you can do, right? You can have, when JD needs a breather, maybe that's when you take him out and you go to a 3-3 look, and Isaiah Foskey's there, or Jordan Botelho there. We've talked about if Jordan Botelho, and I don't know if Jordan Botelho is going to be ready to play defense this week, but we've talked about the possibility in the past. We've talked about the possibility of him and Isaiah Foskey playing together because he was a linebacker in high school. Maybe we see that. Maybe we see more Bo Bauer and Drew White together at times when JD needs that series off. There's a lot of options there. I'm curious to see which ones that they do.
Me too.
And I'm also curious to see how they use the rover. Because you're not going to see a ton. You'll see some slots in this game. You will. But you're not going to see a ton of 11 personnel in first and second down. So if you're going to go with the rover, I'm curious to see how hard they play him. I'm crashing him off I'm bringing him from I'm shooting him in B gaps.
He's my wild card.
Yes.
That's how I would play him. And he's
both of them.
Both of them. They can both do it. But somebody earlier said something about this is Isaiah Pryor's game. Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of game that he can excel in.
Him and Kaiser both, I think,
Exactly. I feel like the rover could be a big part of this game. He could be the wild card. Wherever you put him, send him, make them find the rover and be worried about where the rover's coming from.
Right. And say, hey, look, we're going to try to beat you with the play action pass to negate your rover. That's fine.
Yeah,
because you don't want to throw the ball in early downs. You know what I mean? So when we've got this kid that wears number 14 back there that we're okay with. That's another one I'm curious about is how do they use Kyle Hamilton?
Sure.
Last week it was to get him near the line of scrimmage. I don't know if I would do that as much in this game. I would almost kind of see him doing some of that, but I also kind of feel like maybe you might want him playing off where I'm keying the play action game. Because I think Kyle Hamilton can completely erase your play action game if he's playing disciplined.
Sure.
I also think he can completely take your tight ends out of the game, in my opinion. So I know there's the temptation to get Kyle near the ball. I get it. But I feel like this might be one of those games where if Kyle has only 4 tackles, but 2 or 3 pass breakups, and he's forcing Graham Mertz to be afraid to throw. So there's times where Kyle Hamilton can impact the play, and it's a quarterback throwaway.
Sure.
And we don't see that Kyle Hamilton took it away on TV, but when you break down the film, you're like, yeah, he wasn't no part of throwing that post route with Kyle Hamilton lingering back in the middle of the field.
Right.
So those are the things that I look at schematically, that this is one of those games where Marcus Freeman has a lot of toys.
Exactly.
And how he uses those toys is going to determine how successful they can be in this game. So I'm curious to see what he puts together and how exactly they use it. But I just feel like this is a game where it might seem different than what you would think, but this might be a game where just putting Kyle Hamilton in the middle of that field and saying, hey, Graham, I dare you to throw the ball downfield. Because if he's unwilling to do that because of Kyle Hamilton, that plays right into Notre Dame's hands. But that impacts the run game because now you're inserting Isaiah Pryor, Howard Griffith. Houston Griffith a little bit more, maybe you're bringing your corner fires a little bit more at times, things like that. So it's going to be fun to watch how they prepare. Because normally you have to scheme for the pass game, Vince. This is one of those games where you're going to be scheming all day to stop the run. And it's old school football. It's old school football. And I'm looking forward to it.
So where's your advantage in the run game?
I mean, statistically, you have to give it to Wisconsin right now, right?
Sure.
I mean, the fact is that Notre Dame has had some issues giving up the big plays. So if we're just talking on paper, I think Wisconsin holds the edge. I have a feeling, however, so again, there's statistics and analysis, and the statistics and the analysis of this game says that right now Wisconsin has the edge, right? I don't think you can argue against that. However, just the way Notre Dame is trending defensively, the last 2 games, the run defense has been pretty good with the exception of 2 plays, 1 in each game. They gave up a 67-yard run in the fourth quarter against Toledo.
Right.
They gave up a 30-something yard run was it also the fourth quarter? No, that was the third quarter against Purdue. Because, they were going this way. In the fourth quarter, they were going that way. So, yes, third quarter. They gave up a 31-yard run in the third quarter. You take those 2 plays away, and Notre Dame held both of the last 2 opponents under 100 yards. So we're still the stats are still skewed by the bad first game.
Sure.
Run defense has been pretty good in the last 2 games, but Toledo and Purdue are not Wisconsin.
No.
They are, especially Purdue. They're not a team that likes to run the football that much. So statistically, Wisconsin gets the edge. I just have a feeling that Notre Dame is going to be a little bit more ornery against the run than maybe some people think that they're going to be based on the numbers. So advantage Wisconsin based on statistical analysis, but at the end of the game, if that advantage is flipped, I won't be surprised. What do you say, Vince?
Yeah, I can't go with Notre Dame here. Again, you make a very good point as to what Notre Dame has done in the run game the past 2 games. That's great. But from what I saw from Wisconsin, I've got to give them the edge until I see it happen. Now, I have faith that Notre Dame is going to do some scheme and use their speed and all of that. I really do. And at the end of the day, it's not going to surprise me if Notre Dame has a good day against this Wisconsin run game. But going into the game, I've got to give the edge to Wisconsin.
Right.
Absolutely.
Because this is partly a statistical analysis, right?
Correct.
And it has to factor in. So, Vince, let's talk pass game.
Please.
Let's talk the Notre Dame pass offense against the Notre Dame pass defense against the Wisconsin pass offense.
Right.
This is an area where Wisconsin has not been very good so far this year. Their numbers compared to where they were in 2019 throwing the ball, for example, significantly worse. They are averaging right now through 2 games 6.2 yards per pass attempt. They went for 8.3 against Eastern Michigan, but they only passed for 166 yards. They completed 16 of 20 passes for 166 yards. They have yet to throw a touchdown pass this season, which I found very interesting.
Yeah, no kidding. They tried. They got picked off.
Right. And that's the thing. They've thrown 3 interceptions so far this year. Of course, 2 of them were in the red zone against Penn State. So to me, this is an area where you say, okay, are you good enough in the perimeter to play more man coverage, which then allows you to put more resources towards the run? That's the question. Can you man? Because I think at Rover they're good enough to kind of open up and run with the tight ends. I think Drew White showed he can run with a pretty good. I mean, Notre Dame played a pretty good tight end last week too, and they held him in check. Cam McDonald from Florida State's a pretty good tight end. He didn't do anything against Notre Dame. They've played tight ends pretty well so far this year for the most part.
Agreed. Yeah, tight ends haven't hurt.
And Jake Ferguson's to me the guy I'm most concerned about with this offense because I think he's kind of more of a chain mover. Now they have not been able to get him really going this year. He's got 12 catches in 2 games, which seems great, but he's got those 12 catches have gone for 69 yards.
Ooh.
Yeah. Ooh. So they've got to find a way to stretch the field, and Graham Mertz has not been really a willing downfield thrower this weekend. So,
sorry, I had to put that up there. It's funny.
Bye.
They're just joking. But I thought it was funny. Hey, we're picking Wisconsin in the run game.
Yeah.
All right? Stay tuned.
Yeah. I mean, with that kind of take, peace out. Right. This is just when you look at this Wisconsin pass offense, they don't have a Quintez Cephas. They don't have some of the pass game weapons they've had in the past. I think of Troy Fumagalli, who I thought was tight end, was a real good pass catcher. They had Jazz Peavy a few years ago. Alex Erickson was a really good wide receiver back in the day. Jared Abbrederis, remember him, the kid that played with Russell Wilson back in the day. Like they had Nick Toon. That combination they had in 2011 with Abbrederis and Nick Toon was really good.
I remember Toon.
They don't have those weapons, with all due respect to Kendrick Pryor and Danny Davis. They're nice, solid possession players. That's it. That's where Notre Dame, to me, has the big advantage, which now puts a lot of pressure on Cam Hart and Clarence Lewis to be on their game.
Absolutely.
We need to, I'm saying this from a defensive coach to the defensive player standpoint. We need you guys to take those outside receivers out of the game. We need you to play man. We need you to beat them in the run game. We need you to not be getting stalk blocked on the outside. We need you to be able to take away the play action game. We need you to be able to run with these guys and not be grabby, not give them free 15 yards because you're not trusting your technique. I think they're capable of doing it. I mean, I do. I think that Clarence Lewis and Cam Hart are capable of locking these guys down. If they can do that, now you can really get creative with how you attack the run game.
Exactly.
And because now you can really at times attack with 9. You know, if you want to play some really aggressive robber stuff where your corners are playing the post and taking that stuff away, you've got a guy like Kyle Hamilton who's athletic enough to peel with a tight end on play action, right? That's where I think Notre Dame could have an edge. But it's gonna come down to 2 relatively inexperienced players playing to their full potential. If they do that, I think they can shut down the Wisconsin pass game, which has been I think mediocre would be kind.
Yeah.
Again, that's just 2 games,
right?
I mean, that's just 2 games, but that's what we're going off of right now.
Right.
And they weren't that much better last year, Vince.
Right.
I mean, Wisconsin's pass offense last year was pretty bad. They averaged 6.3 yards per attempt, and they averaged 10.2 yards per completion last year. That's not good.
I mean, that's my defensive game plan. Is I'm putting it on the corners. Like, guys, this is where you earn your scholarship. Like, I have faith in you guys that you can lock these guys down so I can do other things. I'm saying I as the defensive coordinator, so I can do other things with everybody else. And I am pretty much assigning Kyle Hamilton to the tight end and making sure that guy doesn't beat me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's playing center field through the tight end is what I would have him do in this
That's
game.
exactly right. And good luck is what I would say. Right. You know what I mean? That's my game plan. And then I'm going to do all kinds of fun stuff with everybody else to stop the run. Because I do think Clarence Lewis, Cam Hart, even, you're going to get Tariq Bracy involved. If you get Ramon Henderson, okay, fine. But it's the top 2 guys that I'm leaning on big time. And this is where they're going to be on an island. And we're going to see what they've got. And I think they're up to the challenge. I really, really do. I think this is going to be a big challenge for them, but they're going to be up to the challenge. And, you can switch things up later on when Wisconsin is forced to pass, when Notre Dame has a lead. But to start things off, good luck. You know what I mean? That's how I'm approaching this game. And I think Notre Dame has the horses to do it. I really do.
And I want to address this. Kenny Moore says, hopefully Notre Dame sticks Kyle Hamilton up close to the line of scrimmage again. He was disruptive there last week. He was disruptive there last week because that's where you needed him against the Purdue offense, because Purdue was such a screen run-heavy team. I would not say that they'd be wrong to do that again this week, but sometimes you have to be able to say, hey, look, this is a game where we're not going to have Kyle closer to the ball because we think he can take away a part of their game.
That can hurt us.
Right, because Kyle being close to the ball last week took away what Purdue did best, which was the quick game, the screen game, things like that. This week, I feel like you could use Kyle to take away your run, but that makes you more vulnerable because you've got a 6'5" tight end and Jake Ferguson, who's now going to be, attacking down the field on play actions against a 5'11" safety in Houston Griffith or a 6-foot safety and DJ Brown, right?
Right. That's why that's where Kyle Hamilton's size is to your benefit, because he can match up with the tight end just fine.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean you don't ever put him down there. I just feel like this might be a game where having him in center field and just saying, hey, we're going to take away your play action game, because that would allow Notre Dame to really get aggressive attacking near the line of scrimmage. And so we'll see if he does that or not.
Sure.
But again, I don't think Kenny's wrong in thinking, gee, I want Kyle Hamilton close to the ball. I don't think that's ever a bad game plan to say, hey, let's put our best player near the ball.
And I don't mind them moving him around a little bit.
Right.
But I think primarily he needs to make sure the tight end doesn't hurt Notre Dame.
Yes. Now, that's how I would do it. And now to this question from Michael, there isn't one.
Right. That was going to be my answer too.
Danny Davis, Kendrick Pryor, they're nice players, but they're chain mover, possession type of guys. Right. None of them scare you. The only thing that scares me about the Wisconsin pass game is Notre Dame playing unsound and making mistakes. That's the only thing that concerns me. Or being undisciplined, and you're supposed to cover the tight end, you don't cover him, and you let a guy loose, right?
Yeah.
Mistakes by Notre Dame are the only thing that concerned me in the pass game, because you could look at Wisconsin's pass offense, Vince, and say, hey, look, they've only played 2 games. They kind of beat Eastern Michigan convincingly. They didn't really throw the ball much in the second half. Penn State's got a pretty good defense. They only threw for 185 yards that game. Well, hey, this is what their pass game looked like last year too. You know, everybody made this big deal about how great Graham Mertz looked in the opener against Illinois. He went 20 of 21 for 248 yards and 5 touchdowns. Well, you know, since that time, his numbers have been pretty bad. So since that opening game, his first ever start, he had 5 touchdowns. He's thrown 4 interceptions. He's thrown 4 touchdowns in, let me see here, 8 games. So 4 touchdown passes in 8 games, and he's thrown 7 interceptions. He's had completion percentages of 54.5, 56.1, 58.2, 52.6, 60%, 64.7, 59.5 for 5 yards attempt, and then 82.4 against Eastern Michigan in a game where he threw for 141 yards. So it was that whole 14 of 17 for 141 yards. It was a ton of quick game. There weren't really any shots. So to me, this is how their pass game has been. I mean, in his last 5 starts, Graham Mertz has yet to throw for more than 185 yards passing.
Right.
I mean, this isn't what Jack Cohn did. This isn't the Jack Cohn offense, even much less the Russell Wilson offense. You know what I mean? So at least that's what they haven't been so far. So I think that's where I think Notre Dame has the advantage is, you know, put those guys down in the box, make them try to take some shots, and then if you force them to take some shots, like I would put numbers in the box and leave Kyle back, because then if you force him to throw the ball further down the field, he's not overly decisive. He throws late a lot. He's still a young kid, which is kind of why that is. And a quarterback throwing late down the field with Kyle Hamilton playing center field is going to have some problems. Right. And so that's why I feel like this would be a game where you could maybe have Kyle playing deep, but you can't let them get cheap plays in the pass game. That's the big thing.
Absolutely.
You know,
and Alan made a good point there. I just wanted to bring up, even though Kyle Hamilton is playing back, he's playing center field. When he reads run, he can erase a lot of yardage really quickly.
But see, here's the other thing, because so he talks about, like, here's the other thing too is he is an eraser, and that is why I feel like even more he should be in center field, because if you're committing the resources and playing as aggressively as we think Notre Dame needs to play, if they get through the first level, then there's nobody between the end zone and the running back except your free safety.
Right.
Well, who do you want being that guy? Houston Griffith, DJ Brown, or Kyle Hamilton?
I mean, it's going to be Kyle. Any kind of a question like that, it's going to be Kyle Hamilton every time.
Right. I wasn't concerned about that with Purdue last week.
Right.
I wasn't. I almost I dare Purdue to throw the ball downfield because they couldn't protect the quarterback long enough to do that, as we saw the game play out. So that leads me to the final piece of this, Vince. If Notre Dame can force Wisconsin into some passing situations, that's where I think Notre Dame has the big edge. They are not real athletic on the edge. They're not super long either. Tyler Veach has got some good length, but Logan Bruss is 6'5", but he's not long. He's got pretty short arms. They're neither are great athletes by any stretch of the imagination. If Notre Dame can get them into some situations, whether it be play action or not, and actually sometimes the play action plays into your hands if you're able to have your defensive ends, you know, especially Isaiah Foskey kind of coming off the edge thinking pass, because the longer it takes to let those things play out, the more opportunity there's for Isaiah Foskey to just take this game over. So those are some things I'm really curious about. And that's another reason it's so important to have the penetration up the middle, you know, have Jason Adamiola getting in the quarterback's face upside, make him scramble out right into the waiting arms of Foskey and Myron Tungvaloa-Mosa. So that's the pass pro aspect. Notre Dame's been really good at getting after the quarterback. Wisconsin's only given up 3 sacks, but I thought Penn State did a pretty decent job of getting pressure, and I don't think Penn State has the pass rushers that Notre Dame has. So that's another piece to this, is if you can have early down run game success and you can put Wisconsin into some passing situations, that's where I think you can really, really take off, because I think this Notre Dame team can get after it. I mean, look, Penn State had 2 sacks against Wisconsin. In the 2 games since then against Ball State and Auburn, they've had 1 total sack. Right. So I think this is a vulnerable Wisconsin offense to pass pro. The more times Notre Dame can force them to pass, even if it's first down play actions, because they're just not getting a lot of great run game stuff going on early, those are still opportunities to make big plays with Adamiola coming right down your throat and with Isaiah Foskey coming off the edge. I think that's a part of this game that could be really, really important. And especially if you've got, again, I'm going to go back to this, especially if you have Hamilton playing the middle of the field, because when Kyle Hamilton's there, it's like you remember the movie Tombstone? Did you ever see that? One of the greatest movies ever, right?
Yes.
Val Kilmer, one of the best acting jobs ever, playing Doc Holliday. But they're getting ready for the shootout at the OK Corral, right? And Doc Holliday looks at his brother Virgil, and he says, "Hey, give Doc the shotgun." He goes, "They're less likely to get antsy if he's on the what does he call it, the street howitzer, the street cannon, right?" And it's kind of like, okay, you see that guy there with that weapon, and I don't know if I really want to go at that guy. That's kind of the movie scene I think of when I think of Kyle Hamilton playing deep middle. Like, yeah, I'm not sure if I really want to take that shot and take that chance with Kyle Hamilton playing back there. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And any hesitation, any indecisiveness that you get from the quarterback is going to either result in Hamilton making a play or the pass rush making an impact. And that's why I think another reason now, again, Vince, am I going to sit here on Sunday or Saturday night after the show and criticize Marcus Freeman for wanting to get Kyle Hamilton down near the ball? No, not at all. There's no wrong way to use Kyle Hamilton.
Right, exactly. He's that good.
My personal opinion is in this game, I think that would be a way to utilize him. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. But yeah, we'll see how it plays out. But in this, the advantage here, Vince, for me is clear. It's
not close.
Pass and pass rush, in coverage, in production, in turnovers, all of it. Yeah. I view this as a Notre Dame advantage in my opinion.
Me too.
Is there any thought at all to Wisconsin having an advantage? I think I think Wisconsin can maybe rip off some big plays if Notre Dame is unsound. I think if Notre Dame plays a clean game, I don't think Wisconsin has a chance to pass the ball very effectively on them.
Yep, I don't completely agree with that. And there's no sense in taking any more time to repeat what you just said because it's just an agreement. I mean, I don't see where Wisconsin is going to be successful against this unless Notre Dame. This is a situation where the only team that can beat Notre Dame is Notre Dame in this regard. In this setup, the only team that can beat Notre Dame is Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. So there you go.
All right, let's go to finally, Vince, we wrap up with scoring offense versus scoring defense. I'll let you start off on this one, Vince.
That's fine. I have a very, very hard time seeing Wisconsin score a ton of points on this defense. Mm-hmm. I just don't see the explosiveness. I agree with Brian Kelly that possessions are going to be at a premium, but I do not agree. Well, he didn't say this. I'm saying but I don't think that Wisconsin is going to be able to put touchdowns on the board with frequency in their possessions. I just feel like this defense has gotten better every single game. If they continue to take those steps, they're going to continue to get better. And a better Notre Dame team from what we saw last year, last week, we the points, right? We saw the point total has gone down every week. They allowed 13 points last week to Purdue, which has a more explosive offense than Wisconsin does. And I don't know that that's even really a debate, to be perfectly honest with you. So I feel like Notre Dame's defense is going to hold Wisconsin to a modicum amount of points. I'm not ready to say how many yet, but enough points that Notre Dame can be in this game.
Sure.
So, I mean, we're not giving – continue. You take it from there. I don't want to give my
continue. I didn't say anything.
Well, you go.
Okay. Dude, I'm being good. I'm sitting here. I'm calm. No. I'm not like – getting ready to jump in on you.
No, it's great. I just don't see this defense giving up a bunch of points. I just don't.
I agree. I think Wisconsin has the run advantage again statistically, but I think part of the reason I think Notre Dame has a bigger advantage when it comes to pass rush and coverage than Wisconsin has in the run game, which then allows Notre Dame then to commit more resources to. As long as the game plan is sound, I just don't see Wisconsin being an explosive offense. And look, they haven't been for the last couple of seasons. This isn't a team that has been a big play threat the way that they were, when Jack Cohn was throwing to Quintez Cephas, for example. None of these guys are Quintez Cephas. I look at it. I don't feel that Ches Malusi scares me the way in which Jonathan Taylor did a couple years ago.
No, there's no comparison.
Where I feel like, gosh, if we don't put 8 in the box, 9 in the box, he's going to run for 250 yards. I just don't see that. I think Wisconsin will get their yards because that's how they play. It's kind of like, and this is where the Navy comparison works. It's like, Penn State, they rushed for 180 yards against Penn State. Normally when a Power 5 non-option team runs for 180 yards, you're like, yeah, you didn't do. No, they did fine because they kept them out of the end zone. They limited the big plays. They forced Wisconsin to have to run play after play after play. And this is a Wisconsin team that is more prone to mistakes than they have been in the past. 4 turnovers in 2 games. That's not great. And what was it? 3 of them have been 2 interceptions and 2 fumbles lost, right? 3 INTs and a fumble, right? They've lost the ball 4 times already this year. They weren't great at protecting the ball last year, Vince. They played 7 games and lost the ball 12 times, 7 interceptions and 5 fumbles in 7 games last year. So I just don't see this being a vintage Wisconsin offense. It wasn't last year. They look this year a lot like they did last year. Now, could this be the game they break out? I guess. I just don't see it. And I also think, again, Notre Dame is trending in the right direction. They've gotten better and better and better in each game. I don't think Wisconsin has the speed that hurt Notre Dame in the opener. And I'll be honest with you, I think this is probably the least scary offense that they've played so far. I mean,
no question.
Purdue has a better offense than they did. We knew that all offseason. Toledo has a better offense than Wisconsin when it comes to scoring points in a way that is dangerous to Notre Dame. Florida State, I don't think is better because I just think Notre Dame played bad that game, in my opinion. Just the big plays.
Sure.
Wisconsin's not a big play offense. They're a ground you out and those type of things. And I just don't think that is a situation where I'm concerned about them scoring a lot of volume of points. The question here is, will they score enough to keep Notre Dame's offense from winning the game? That's the question. But they're not going to lose this game because the defense gives up 35, 40 points. I'd be shocked by that.
Oh,
Absolutely
I would
shocked
too.
by that.
That would be a very interesting post-game show because my mouth would be on the floor.
Yeah.
I'm just – that's not how I see this going down. As many different scenarios as go through my head, I just don't see it being that way. And
the only way I could see it that way, Vince, is if there's like 2 15-yard fields – kick returns, exactly. You fumble the ball, throw a pick. They only have to go 15 yards to score. Stuff like that.
There was a thread on the message board. How do you see? What are the scenarios that you see occurring? A Notre Dame close win, a Wisconsin close win, or blowouts by either team. And the blowouts by either team, honestly, with my bottom 2, because I don't see it being a huge amount of points being scored. I just don't.
I actually went with Notre Dame close win number 1. I actually went with Notre Dame blowout ahead of Wisconsin winning because I do think if the Notre Dame offense puts it all together, they can score on Wisconsin.
I agree.
I just feel that way about the Wisconsin off. I'm not predicting it, right?
Yeah.
It's just if we're looking at the 4 scenarios, which one is more likely? That's why I picked close Notre Dame win as my number 1 option because I don't think the offense for Notre Dame is playing at a level that they're going to do that. But if the Wisconsin offense plays its game, I still don't think they're capable of ripping up Notre Dame's defense.
Yeah.
If they're on their A game, they may score 27-28, but they're not scoring 40. Right. If Notre Dame brings their A game on offense, they can score 35, 40 points on this team, in my opinion, because there is a significant athleticism advantage on both sides of the ball. Yep. The question is can you be good enough in the trenches on both sides of the ball to take advantage of that? That's been the problem for so many teams. Wisconsin dominates you in the trenches, and it negates your athleticism advantage. When Ohio State has had success against them, they've been able to neutralize that. So in the 2019 Big Ten title game, for example, Vince, Wisconsin has a 14-3 lead at halftime, something like that.
Yeah.
Well, Ohio State made adjustments, came out in the second half, and their athleticism took over, and they ended up winning like 34-21. Notre Dame has to find ways to let their athleticism carry the day on both sides of the ball. If that happens, Notre Dame will win this game and win this game convincingly. If it becomes a trench game, then this is going to be a low-scoring, tight game where it could be a situation where who has the ball last is going to win. And who has the ball last in an ugly way, not like a 45-42 who has the ball last. So that's where it's going to come down to. But I'm with you. I think Notre Dame scoring defense, red zone defense is better than what was. I mean, They pissed away that game against Penn State. They had so many chances in the red zone and couldn't get it done. You look at their
on the 1 yard line. I mean,
their third down offense has been, their turnovers, and there's nowhere over there that they're better than Notre Dame, in my opinion. Especially when you consider a lot of their stats came because they were patted them against Eastern Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely an advantage for Notre Dame.
Yep,
So,
I agreed.
Yep.
So that's going to do it for this edition of Stacking Up. Make sure you check out, subscribe, hit the notification bell, tell your friends. We've
smash one of those things, or all three of them, whichever one you're supposed to smash it.
Yep. And if you're listening on the podcast, make sure you subscribe, leave us a 5-star review. Really appreciate it. We're seeing lots of new subscribers coming in, which is awesome. We love to grow the IB family. We love having everybody around. It's fantastic.
We've already had our best month on the podcast and YouTube on YouTube, and we're still 8 days left in the month. So I appreciate y'all very much. Our traffic this month, we've already had more impressions, more page views, more watched hours than any month we've ever had. And that's all about y'all, because we can put out all the videos we want, but if y'all aren't watching it, then it doesn't matter. So thank you very much for that. And we're very, 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 very close to my end of September goal for the message board. We're about 5 people away from my end of September goal. We were way ahead of schedule. We've had some slowdown in recent weeks, last week or so. So if you've been thinking about it, come join us. Come join us on the message board. You can see that below, boards.irishbreakdown.com. Lots of good conversation going. So come join us for that too. Thanks for making time with me today, Vince.
I do what I can for you, my friend. But we will talk to everybody tomorrow, 12:30. We have our prediction
time. I still haven't picked mine yet, Vince. I'm still debating. Have you picked yours yet?
No, not at all. Okay. Not at all. I have a feeling where I'm going, but I'm not sure yet. So we'll have to wait and see tomorrow.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. We'll talk to you again very, very soon.